Okay, I'm going to do a couple examples with finding domain without looking at a picture. So if I am looking for a domain, what I need to be thinking about are the two functions that have restrictions, okay, have domain restrictions. So the first type of function with domain restrictions are square root functions. And the second type of function with domain restrictions are called rational functions, which they look like fractions. Okay, so if I see one of those two things, I know that I have restrictions involved, which means there's values that won't work in terms of the domain, which means in terms of x. So here we go. The first one, f of x is equal to a rational function. So I have a rational function, meaning I have a fraction, and in fractions, the restriction is that the bottom cannot be 0. That's in every single kind of fraction. So you are going to take that denominator and say that that cannot be 0. Because if it is, it means we're dividing by 0, and that's not a thing. So write a statement that says the denominator can't be 0, and then just simply solve that for x. So in this case, I would add 8, divide by 2, and you would be done. You get x cannot be 4. That is explaining all you need to know about the domain because x represents domain values. Okay, next one. I have a square root function. Okay, so I have a square root function, which is one of the restricted types of functions. So I'm going to think about what that means. What's the restriction with a square root? With a square root, the inside part has to be a positive number. Okay, the inside has to be a positive number in order to compute. So we're going to take the inside stuff and we're going to write a statement saying it has to be a positive number, which we would write as an inequality, saying that it has to be greater than or equal to 0, because anything greater than or equal to 0 is a positive number, okay? And then you're going to simply solve for x just like you did in the last one. So this time, be a little bit more careful than before because when you get to this step and you're dividing, remember you're dividing by a negative, which means you have to flip the sign. So it's going to flip to be x can be anything less than or equal to 3. And that would be describing your domain. So that's good enough. The third one I threw on here because it's kind of a trick question. So there's only two functions that have restrictions, right? Square roots and rational functions. This is not a square root and it is not a fraction, so you have no restrictions, okay? No restrictions. So what do you write as your domain? When you have no restrictions, you're going to write that the domain is negative infinity to infinity. It just means that anything will work.